How are your symptoms? Did you feel okay, or did you? How do you feel? Like,
Yeah, I'm okay now, but like it was bad.
Oh, I see.
At the first 3-4 days.
Oh my gosh.
Like I had fever, a terrible headache,
Oh my gosh.
muscle pains, and like cough,
Oh, I'm
fatigue,
sorry.
everything, like, you know.
Oh my gosh. Sorry.
I spent the week in bed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's good that you could rest and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It affects everyone so differently. I mean,
Yeah,
my
I guess so.
2 people in my orchestra section got it, and one of them got it because he was visiting his 96-year-old mother in a nursing home, and there was like a little outbreak, and so he thought he would have to worry about giving it to her, but he actually got it from his mother. But his mother didn't even know, like she didn't even have any symptoms or anything. So. Oh.
This is for a different class, right? I'm pretty sure
Oh, this
I've
class?
seen this stuff before.
Have you seen it? You haven't? This is actually interesting. Do you want me to talk about these graphs? So we're doing a review of our department. An 8-year review every year we're supposed to get reviewed by outside people. So since we've been working on this report. So it turns out that UCLA is like the biggest producer of POC, BAs, and PhDs in the United States. Of the top 27 departments, which I didn't really even know, but here I'll show you.
Scaled by school size in any way?
No. So okay, it's not scaled by school size. So let's take a little bit, but it's a good point. Look, Ohio State is actually bigger than us.
Oh, okay.
We have 30,000 undergraduates. Ohio State is like more than 40,000. Where's UT Austin? Let me see if I can find that. Let me see. I just updated this.
I mean, UNC is similar size, Michigan's similar size.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So, like, this is, first of all, we just produce a lot of BA graduates, just as an absolute number. We just produce a lot, like, maybe 60% more than these schools, which are big. Ohio State's bigger, Michigan's the same size. In terms of African American students, we produce, by far the most. UNC is the same size. Columbia does a really good job. Job's surprised by Columbia's a relatively small school, but they produce a lot of African American BAs. UT Austin's bigger than us. We're by far the biggest producer of Latinx BA political science graduates. This surprised me again because in terms of composition, UCLA, UC San Diego, and UC Berkeley are sort of the same. We're about 30,000 students and the same percentage of Latinx students. So we are really producing like almost twice as many political science BAs as those folks. Maybe these schools are more science oriented, I don't know. But
Yeah.
UCSD's poli-sci is very small.
Is that right? Yeah. What's really
Coming from the department.
Is that right? Is that what you went to undergrad?
Yeah, that's right.
This is super, like Stanford produces maybe 50 political science BAs a year. We produce like 500. We produce almost 10 times, basically 10 times as many political science BAs as Stanford does. So, and they're just the same, their faculty size is the same. And Asian American BA students too, we produce the most. So we produce a lot in absolute numbers, but you think even if you divide, we're still on top. Which is, again, I didn't know. I mean, let's see, there's another. Let me do the PhD one. Total number of PhDs. So Harvard is, I didn't know this either, they produce more than anyone else. This is some political science, but they produce a lot more. And we're kind of like fifth, we tied for you. But in terms of African Americans, we're second behind Chicago, African American PhDs. This is actually not a very large number. This is over a 20-year period. UCLA's produced this is a 10, 12 African American PhDs, which is not a huge number, but it's much better than people who produce literally 0 over a 20-year period.
Are the labels on the graphs wrong? 20-year period? I can't
Oh,
quite
no, I take it not 10 year. 10 year.
Oh, okay.
Since 2011. Sorry,
I
10
can't
year.
really see it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault.
No, not the 10 year. I'm sorry. I was wrong. A 10-year period or 11-year period, whatever. Okay. Okay, how about Latinx? Well, we're ahead. UT Austin and Stanford are the closest competitors. And Asian Americans, we're kind of in here. But if you look at total POC, we're the best. If you take a look at total URM, we're also the best, producing PhD students. And we're not even the biggest producer, biggest absolute producer. So if you divide by the denominator, we're also very good. So, hey, so that's the kind of thing, when in this report you're supposed to brag about your stuff. Although, there's another stuff I'll brag about. Let's see. This is supposed to be a public document, so there's nothing secret about this. This is, Eric Min and Lori went through and looked at every single department's webpage to see how people's placements are. So these are jobs listed for PhD graduates between 2014 and 2021. And let's see, this black line is tenure track jobs. The gray is non-tenure track jobs, like postdocs essentially. And these are other like private sector jobs. And UCLA is like the fourth in terms of, these are getting raw numbers, just number of getting people jobs.
Poli-sci specifically, or?
Poli-sci specifically, yeah. Just our.
But of anybody who entered at any time, just as long as they graduated between 2014 and 2016.
I think so, yeah. Right. But you can, given that, so Harvard is a much bigger department than ours in terms of producing students, maybe 20-30% better, that's understandable. Princeton does a great job too. Chicago does pretty good. Chicago's around the same size as ours, maybe a little smaller, but we're pretty up there. But it really surprised me that we did that much better than places like UC San Diego. So, and the places, so we're doing great. Either we are doing great, or there's some sort of error in what people put in the webpage. But you don't think that like San Diego would not want to put everything they can on the webpage, right? So anyway, yeah, we're doing great, at least in jobs. Much better than Yale. Yale, MIT, all these places. Princeton, we're doing better than Stanford. They put a lot more money, obviously. They fund their students a lot better. So.
Out of curiosity, what was a postdoc classified as?
Oh, postdoc is non-tenure track. It's the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think if you look at, this is number of, this is just academic job placements, and then this is separating between if you get a job in the top 20 department versus not. So this is both. Let's see, are they tenure track or not? Yeah, these are any academic appointment, tenure track or not tenure track. And so again, we're like, if you look at just pure academic appointments, non-tenure track or tenure track, we're second. Among the top 27 departments or whatever. And if you look at top 20 placements, I think we're ninth. So these are hard jobs to get. These are like jobs in the top 20, and we're doing pretty good. So yeah, that's something which surprised me too. See, anyway. So things.
MIT.
Huh?
We beat out MIT for a top 20 position.
Well, MIT is a very small program.
It is.
Yeah. But you're right. I was a little surprised. Yeah. I think we're below Columbia, but again, we're about the same as San Diego. Yeah. Cornell does pretty good, I guess. Yeah. Definitely better than you had. So yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah. So.
Validating a lot of my.
Huh?
I said validating a lot of my decisions.
Yeah, exactly. We will show this to our incoming students. Exactly.
But wow, yeah, this is surprising to be honest. Just anecdotally over the last couple of years, this surprising me.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's some sort of reporting error, Eric just simply went to every department's webpage and looked at their placement record posted on the webpage. So you wouldn't think that they have any reason to underplay it, or maybe some places are better at updating it than others. I don't know. We put some work into it. So I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Are there other things which are interesting? I think that's probably. Oh, I showed you this before. So there's all this stuff about time to degree and all this stuff. The gender, I think, of our graduate program is roughly the same. Maybe it's decreasing a little bit, but roughly the same over the last 8 years. It's like this.
That's the students?
Yeah, the graduate students. Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure these are across all cohorts. Yeah. Let's see. This is interesting a little bit. This is the yield rate for international versus URM students and non-URM. So this is the percentage of people who admitted who came. So for non-URM, it's been about the same. International students about the same, but it has been decreasing a little bit for URM students. So I think reflects greater competition for URM students. Yield rate for genders have been about the same, sort of constant. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. This is where the people who got admitted to our program but didn't come, where they ended up.
Of the people that reported, right?
Yeah, of the people
This
reported.
isn't any,
Huh?
is it common for people to report this?
Pretty common. I think grad division asked for it. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know how many non-responses there are.
Like, I don't think I told anybody.
Yeah, and it's-
Oh, really? Oh, maybe you're, okay, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we basically, there should be some sort of network analysis of this too. You can figure out like how many people, so we don't know how many people like chose, like we know how many, so we know like 23 people over this period chose Harvard over us. But we don't know how many other people like chose us over Yale or something.
Right.
I mean, among the people who went, went to Yale. So I don't know. So yeah, so you can see, we don't compete too well against, these top programs, but I think we do okay in the kind of this range.
Where is UCLA?
So these are, if you were admitted to UCLA but didn't come, this is where you end up going.
Oh,
So, yeah. Okay, let's see, other fun things. This ends up being this huge long thing. Oh. I'm just showing you this. I think I showed this to the whole department.
Pretty small.
Is there
The
an
master's
equivalent
program
for,
for PS is pretty big.
is there an
I think it's one
equivalent
of
for
our
RE
masters
in other
for
departments as
school.
well?
No, it's a little bit rare, yeah.
It's-
I think that's been helpful for us getting, PhD students.
It's very UCLA is. Yeah.
This is interesting. This is
Struggle to get like a law club, like.
this is the age distribution. Well, they're really the seniority distribution of our faculty over time. So this is an individual faculty member. And so this person in 2014, 2015 was 50 years past their PhD. So I think I'm around here. I'm one of these people here. Me and Kathy Bond. I think we talked about this. Did I show this before?
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of see this over time. You see people's retirements and all that. These are the two people we hired this year. This is Prasher and Louis. Anyway, this is the number. This should be 40. So our target FT total is 40. We need to hire 12 more people. So this is showing how much. We were near 40 for a while, but around here we started declining rapidly.
What does that stand for?
FT stands for full-time equivalent. What that means if you have some people in a department are half in one department, like half in us and half in communications or Asian American studies or something. If that's the case, you're only 5.5 FT in our department. You only have half your teaching load in our department. So we have to hire a lot of people. That's everything. Okay. Yeah, we have. You did the survey, Lori did a survey of graduate students, right?
She said it.
Yeah. Every year, the whole issue about housing costs gets worse and worse. This year we
But there's no real way to control it. I'm sure that there are some solutions, but why aren't they being implemented?
I mean, for housing directly or stipends?
Bring down rent, stuff like general, I guess general stuff in the city around, not necessarily the school.
I mean, I'm not sure why, UCLA has housing, but it's expensive, right? The student housing is not cheap. I don't know what the point of that is. I mean, they don't have there's no competitor, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I was surprised how much more expensive it is even relative to San Diego, which is also a very expensive place. So I really don't know. I mean, I don't think that campus housing should be like a profit center for the university myself. But I mean, the TA salaries are given by the UCOP, by the whole UC system. That's not something so our department, if we had a lot more money, could top up people. That's something. But when we give stipends to first year students, our new entering class, now they're very far below other competing places. You probably know this better than I do, right? So other places now offer you $40,000. We offer, the TA salary is 26 or something like that. So that's a huge difference. And so I think.
And they're cheaper places to
Yeah, exactly.
Typically back then.
Every year it gets worse, to be honest. There's got to be something to do about it. So, I mean, we have some, like, if people get endowed chairs or other kinds of money or grants, they can use that to spend, you know, to help support students and get RA-ships and all that, but, you know, Huh?
70 or 60% of incomes go to rent anyways.
yeah, exactly.
It's just too big of a cost.
It's a, you know, it's a problem. We talked about this a little bit, because it's the whole rent thing in Los Angeles, other cities, in the end, it's a political problem. It's a regulatory kind of problem. Because if there were less restrictions on building, you know, capitalism can work. I mean, you can just, there's no one saying, I don't want, maybe there are people out saying, I don't want buildings. But, I don't know. It's really not a good thing.
I miss Chicago's rent prices.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I was talking to Lu Wei Ying, she's coming from St. Louis.
Yeah.
She said she has a nice modern apartment for $600 a month or something. It's a one-bedroom apartment. You know?
Amazing apartments in cities like that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's a structural issue with our university and apartment and everything. Sometimes I go and there's this website called LoopNet. It's like Zillow for commercial buildings. Have you seen this? I don't know.
What is it called?
I'll show it to you. My parents are kind of into real estate, so they have stuff in Alabama. So like, they own like 2 or 3 apartment complexes. Like one of them has like 80 units or something like that. A 2-bedroom rents for $1,200 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Maybe even less, like $900. You know, like, what this is like the commercial property website for, it's like Zillow for commercial property. And then like, what you can see is sometimes there'll be like apartments for sale.
Who owns these auctions? Is it like the government or?
I don't know about auctions, I really don't know about that, but like, there's around there used to be a place, where was it? So look here, like, this is like a 82-unit apartment building, $24 million. That sounds like a lot of money, but it's actually really good. You get
Yeah.
82 apartments, right?
I mean, you can see the per unit price.
Yeah, that's not bad at all, right? So what's keeping you from saying, let's just buy this thing? I don't know what, you know, usually you could just do it. I don't know what the problem is, you know? And just, UCLA has the money. I mean, you know, some of these things, like even a department or division could buy. Like, if we saved our money, we could buy like, you know, $1 million or $2 million, whatever, something. You know, it's not terrible. You know, it's a solvable problem in some sense, right? Usually, we can say we have $100 million. We're just going to buy some complexes around here, more housing for our students. I think it's, yeah, exactly. So I think this is not a bad deal. Like, yeah.
Is there precedent for that anywhere? Like academic department buying?
But I think Michael means like the unit, not.
Well, no, but I mean, it's not crazy. I mean, it's like, okay, so like, I don't know. Okay, this is,
I heard like in Boston, one of my friends told me that in her freshman year, they had just bought a hotel and remodeled it for students.
oh yeah.
So that's not the only thing example I've heard.
I don't know if the department could swing it, but I mean, like, the typical way is also you wouldn't buy this straight up. You would just like get their down payment or something like this. So the down payment is like $5 million or something like that. The division could afford that if that really is a priority. And then, not the department, but then you would kind of charge rent and stuff. But, you know, I think you could do that. I mean, I think. I don't know if the division owns things, but maybe they do. I don't know. Stuff like that. I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff sometimes. Anyway.
I
So,
mean, what was stopping them from investing in Bitcoin? I mean, like, seriously, like,
Right.
if we open up those floodgates and like. and
yeah,
it's-
right,
I
that's
guess-
true.
I guess the concern is sort of pulling it more, even more into like a profit-driven
Yeah.
entity.
Well, I mean, like, people say, like, you know, I don't know about University of California, but probably universities have large investments, like large endowment investments. Like, they're among the biggest, you know.
Yeah.
Like Harvard University has like $800 billion, some crazy number like that.
Pretty big too, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, there are people who do nothing but manage that stuff. And so, I remember, there's a story that like, you know, if we're an alien, we're going to come and look at the you know, universities that would say, essentially an investment bank with a small educational component. And it's sort of true. I mean, UC is different because we have, you know, a tax basis and all that. But if you look at Harvard or Princeton or these places, their endowments are huge. Like, you know, and like, you know, the story is NYU is actually one of the few universities which decided they're going to spend aggressively based on their endowment. So they're the most improved university over the last 20 years for sure, because part of it's because New York became a more attractive place to live, but part of it is they consciously tried, the story is, to spend money to get better. So they'll build lots of stuff. But like, yeah, but I mean, Harvard, during the 2008 crisis, they actually had certain very aggressive investments, like hedge fund type investments. If the price rose, you actually had to put in cash to protect your investment. It's not even that it declines, so they actually were forced to do that. So, you know, Larry Summers was the guy who was in charge of that.
Yeah, no conflicts there.
So the economists. The only good story that Keynes apparently was like invested the endowment of like one of those Oxford universities and lost 50%. So, okay. So what I'm going to talk today, okay, I'm going to talk about, so what we haven't done so much in the class so far is models with a continuous action. So we did a little bit of this in last time, the Consolidation model, but almost everything we have is like, you know, A1 is like, you know, accept or reject or something like that. But what if something is like, you know, like an interval like this, something number from 0 to 1. Okay, so now basically instead of, it's all, everything is the same, all the game theory is the same, except instead of using tables, you use functions, that's all. Okay, so let's take a very simple case where, say, like, I don't know, I have a person, this is not even a game. This is the utility function. Before it was like a function from A1 like this, but now it's a function from, say, interval 1. And say, I don't know, I'll make this. Let's say that, I don't know, U1 of A, I don't know, what do you think? Maybe, like interpretation is like, let's just look at this, I'm not sure. What is that? Okay, what does this look like?
Upside down problem.
Yeah, it's like minus 2, this and like this. It's a very common kind of utility function. Huh? What is it maximized? 0, right? So if you have this, the maximum choice is 0. How do I find that using math? I talked about this a little last time. Is you can calculate the derivative of this function. Right? The derivative, this is kind of calculus. The derivative corresponds to the slope of the function at that point. Locally. Okay? Sort of a first order approximation of the function. How do I take the derivative? There's a, you know, you just take the calculus class or whatever, but you know, the derivative of this is going to be what? Any kind of exponent, which is up here, bring the exponent down, and just take the exponent down by 1, so you get this. So to find where the derivative is equal to 0, this is the so-called first order method. I simply say equal to 0. Therefore, it's going to be what? 0, right? So, okay, no big deal. How about something like this? I think that the A1 is going to be 10, 4. What about this? Yeah, now this looks like this. I'll put my A like this, right? Okay. What maximizes this? See, -2 or 2, these are the highest ones, right? So the optimal choices. Okay, can I use the first order method? If I take the derivative of this, what's this going to be equal to? 2a. So this is equal to 0. So therefore a is what? 0, right? Does the first order method work in finding maximum here? No, right? It actually finds the minimum. So remember the slope is 0 at this point, but it corresponds to So the first order condition, the first order method does not always work. In fact, sometimes it finds things which are the exact opposite. Let's keep on doing some examples. How about what does this correspond to? Okay, this is kind of like this. I'll just give you A, sorry. Except here I want to be close to 0. Here I want to be kind of close to 1, right? This is saying the optimal thing is, if you just look at this, right, a square is always positive, so this number is always negative. So therefore, this is maximized when this is 0, and you can make it 0, but it will be 8, right? And the interpretation is like, you want to be as close as possible to 1. Have you heard the term quadratic loss before? This is like a quadratic loss function. This is kind of like when you're doing linear regression or anything like that, you're trying to minimize the kind of unexplained variance or something that it's, you minimize the loss kind of, that's the analysis. Okay. So how do I do this?
It moves, does it?
Huh? Sorry?
I mean, it's supposed to be an upside down.
Yeah.
But it moves to 1, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So what does this look like? Except it looks like this, except it kind of moves over to this. Right? Let's take the derivative of this. How do I do this? Well, there's something inside I can expand it, or I can just use the so-called chain rule to express this. So you can think of this as a square of a function inside. So you can bring this down. This is -2 and -1. And then I have to multiply it by the derivative inside. The derivative of this inside is just 1. Have you seen this? Okay. Okay, so this is this number, it's just -2 or 1. -1, 0. So if I solve this, I get what? A1 minus 1 equals 0. And 1 equals 0. Does the first order method work? Yes, yeah, absolutely. This is not super hard. Finally, we'll just do one more example. Oh, this way. What's the optimum here? Huh?
Oh, sorry, I mean the -2.
Yeah, well, it could be -2 or 2, right? Well, let's look at it carefully.
Yes.
Oh, but
That would be just
-2?
Well, yeah, it's going to be, now the thing looks kind of like this, right? It's 0 at 1 like this, right? And the region goes from 2 to -2. So I think this is 1, but this is like -9 or something like that, right? It's kind of shifted over. So I think the optimal. I think A is -2, right? If you put -2, this becomes not 9. At 1, it's like, oh, sorry, at 2, it's just 1. Does the first order method here work? No. So this is, sometimes it just doesn't work, period. So as a result, we almost always assume things should look like this, which are kind of flat at the top. We also assume things don't look kind of like this, which is also, we choose this or this, the first order method. So the term for that is usually concavity or convexity. I guess convexity. We almost always assume things look like that, okay? Just because otherwise we have problems. That's all. We assume things. You know, utility functions have this kind of property where they go up and come down again. They don't kind of go up and down a lot, or they don't look this kind of strange thing. So, because if you have something like this, then you can have weird kind of things at the end. Well, they're not really weird. These are true things, right? When I teach this to undergraduates, I tell them a little anecdote, which I think is true, which is, how is television different from how it was 30 years ago? Like when you watch Game of Thrones or whatever, how is that different from watching Hill Street Blues in the 1990s?
It's better.
It's better, it's much better. TV is a lot better now overall. There's no comparison. If you look and watch the show from those days, you think, what the heck's going on here? Right? But why is that? I think there's a pretty clear underlying explanation. Why is TV better now than it used to be?
Better technology.
Yeah, you could say there's better technology, better cameras and stuff. It's more accessible. That's for sure true. But the overall writing and stuff, that's not really changed that much. I guess we have computers, right? But it's not like suddenly people found a better way of making, make the scripts or something. I don't know, maybe,
I mean, a lot of it had to do with the shift that I used to write about this for work, but
Uh-huh.
the shift towards subscription models.
Yeah, exactly, right. So
So
the-
money in, and then it came.
exactly. So a lot of it has to do with the modality of making movies, making shows, TV shows. So how did that change? So when you see, so like when you have a Netflix show, it's all on at once, right? You throw the entire season up there, unless you're trying to be clever. But did people make TV like that in 1980? They did not. So the model back then was, it was kind of taken from season to season, and even in the middle of the season, you could get canceled.
And I was talking about this, and I think it's responsive to the viewers.
Right,
Now it's just, you make all of the episodes and put them out.
Right.
So you don't know, maybe it can all go down or it can all go up.
right.
Whereas seasons, I think they're more responsive.
Right.
They film it every week.
Yeah, so the economic modality was that you kind of had to prove yourself every season, and because it was very costly, maybe this is a technology thing, you could just get canceled in the middle. Okay, so therefore, if you're a viewer of these shows, could you be confident that there would be another season or another show even next time? No, you just couldn't. And a lot of very well-known shows suddenly just kind of got canceled, period. And a lot of shows kind of got ended in really weird ways. That does not happen anymore because they have the funding to just do it all at once. Okay, so how does...
It's also
huh?
shorter too.
What?
It used to be 20 episodes, 24 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's like,
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so how did that change? So now the viewer can go to watch a TV show knowing that there'll be, at least 20 episodes, a good season ready to go. They don't have to worry about it week for week. How does that now, like kind of interesting, how does that, since the viewer expects that, how does that change how the writers write the thing? Write the show.
They ran for a full season?
Yeah, they write for a full season knowing that the full season will exist. Whereas before they didn't do that. They couldn't, because it might not. They couldn't have this long plot arc and then it will fall apart so the plot arcs were much, much shorter if they had them at all. Okay, so why does that make better TV?
You get an actual story instead?
Yeah, exactly. So this is my theory. I think it's true, which is early on, you can ask viewers to invest in the characters much, much more because they know they will be around. So if you have a show which you're not sure will be around and the viewers aren't sure it's around, you can't really ask them to invest much, okay? Because that's just too much to ask and they're not going to do it. If you know it's going to be around, you can ask them. So therefore, you can create this very thick characterization on long plot arcs, which makes everyone happy. Okay, so to me, it's kind of like this. So there's this term like increasing marginal returns to scale or something like that. With a long plot arc, you know that if you invest now, you can get the benefits way in the future. Okay, and so therefore, you can create the first few episodes which are not very good. Like a lot of these Netflix shows, you watch the first 2 episodes, you think, what's going on? This is not entertaining. And people will say, oh, just keep it going, then it gets really better. That did not happen in the past because you could get canceled in the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So what do I mean? So in other words, the utility with the number of episodes kind of looks like this. Okay, and that is the marginal, so the utility is actually negative in the beginning, but it increases all the time. Okay, the marginal utility increases, starts negative, but actually increases. This is kind of like a classic increasing returns to scale kind of thing. Okay, so therefore, in this kind of situation, you can get much better in the end utility. Does that make sense? That's my theory, at least. The other corroboration of this theory is this is one of these things which is not concave. So in other words, maybe traditional TV was kind of like this, okay? Whereas, now Netflix TV is like, sometimes you get this huge, thing at the end because all this stuff you've been waiting for finally comes to fruition, right? So not only is this better, okay? If you have this, then the situation is more like this. You might kind of have something in the middle. But if it's like this, you basically either optimize at the ends, at the corner, it's the corner solution, which I think is true. So in other words, not too many people watch Game of Thrones like halfway through and then quit. You either watched it all or you didn't watch it. Watch none. Does that make sense? So that's my theory of TV. I think it's sort of true. I think it really is.
There's an interesting dynamic though
Uh-huh.
right now where the pendulum's kind of shifting back
Uh-huh.
because you have all these streaming services that want to maintain sustained engagement over longer periods
Right.
of time. So a lot of these are actually switching back to episodic.
Oh, I
And
see.
have changed kind of the quality in each episode, so it's still this serialized plot,
Uh-huh.
but it's just released episodically to kind of keep you.
Oh, right.
There's a different dynamic now than that first binge wave.
Yeah, exactly.
As a
Yeah.
watcher under the banner of heaven, I'm quite frustrated by
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
by this fact.
Really high quality, but released once a week.
I want it all.
I watched Pachinko. Pachinko was released like that too recently. That's really
He's doing it, HBO Max.
yeah, interesting. So you studied this. You like working this as a
I wrote for Business Insider about media and
oh,
entertainment.
I see. Interesting.
One of the reporters.
Okay, cool.
I lived in this world for like 2 years.
Oh, that's cool. Interesting. That must have been fun. Okay, going back. So, this is how we do things. So basically, everything is kind of there's a whole so it's the game theories. It's all the same. You're still maximizing utility or whatever, but you can just write it as functions as opposed to tables. Okay, and then you just take derivatives and set them equal to zero, and generally hope that works. And of course, you realize that sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about I have a little model which I will try to apply to data in some sense. Okay, so this is going to be a model which sort of illustrates this. Okay. So I'll start very simple and then just kind of build up on it. So with an episodic release, at least people know that the whole series is going to be released or something. Right.
Because they're paying a subscription, and it's, that's.
Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be a model of, I guess it's not really conformity of I don't know, I guess conformity is not, I don't know, of maybe choosing opinions or something. So the idea is something like this, and it has a spatial relationship too. So it's like, maybe this is about TV or something. I watch TV. I have an opinion about it, which is my own thing, but my publicly expressed one, I don't want to be too different from my friends. Okay? So the way to think about it is something like, say there's just two people, okay? And so that, I don't know, A1, I can just choose any number, this is their set of real numbers, you can both face fine. And the game is going to be like this. My function, my utility is a function of my own choice and your choice. Okay. And say that my chosen opinion is like 0. What does this mean? This means that I want to choose close to 0. This is how I really feel. I feel this is not a good show or something. Okay. Whereas yours is that you think it's a good show, so your opinion is 1. Your optimal choice is 1. So if this is the game, it's pretty simple, right? I choose 0, you choose 1. Okay, but we're going to add a little bit of a kind of social component to it, which is I want my opinion to not be too different from yours. So we talk about it. I think it's a little awkward if I say I hate Star Trek, you love Star Trek, something like that. And this is going to be encapsulated in this. So this, what does this mean? This is a quadratic loss away from my kind of ideal point. This is the quadratic loss away from what you choose, so to speak. Okay. So what's going on here? You can think of these just spatially, even like we're choosing a spot on the beach. I like 0 is where the pier is, 1 is where the ice cream truck is. I want to be close to the pier, but I also want to be close to yours. Okay? You want to be close to the ice cream truck, but you also want to be close to me. Now it's a proper game in the sense that my utility depends on what you do, so it makes sense. Okay, so how do I solve this?
Is it A1 minus 0?
Yes, it's A1 minus 0. So we can think about it as like, here's 0, here's 1. Maybe A1 is here, A2 is here. So I want to be close to 0, you want to be close to 1, but I also want to be close to you. So there's a quadratic loss here, quadratic loss here. How do I make prediction in this game? What solution concept do you want to use?
Each player maximizes their utility subject to the
Yeah,
other
exactly.
player's
Right.
best response.
You can think of just best responses, right? It's like Nash equilibrium. Like, given this, given what you do, I can figure out what my best response is, and given what I do, you can figure out your best response, and we find something which is we're both responding, best responding. That's an issue. So how do we do that? How do I find my best response? So person one's best response getting what 2 does. How do I find it? Why can't I just erase it?
Just the first word.
Take the derivative, right? Use the first order method. So I'm going to take the derivative of u1 with respect to a1. What does this mean? I'm looking at how this changes with respect to a1. Take a2 as constant, because this is given a2, right? Okay, what's the derivative of this? Well, this is just like this, right? So the derivative of this is what? Minus 2a1. What's the derivative of this with respect to a1? It's kind of like, I'm looking at this, right? This is going to be what? I think it's minus 2. Oh, we're doing this, right? One. Now, how do I solve for a1? Set equals 0. That's the first order method. If you take an econ class, you're doing this literally all day, like all the time.
What is it called?
First order method. Yeah. This thing, when you said the derivative set it equal to 0, this is sometimes called a first order condition. Or FOC. Okay, and usually you just do it, assume that it works. Or assume the stuff that makes it work. Because sometimes it just doesn't. It's important. Okay, so I'm going to solve for a1, is that what I'm supposed to do, right?
This is for utility 1, right?
Yeah, for person one. Okay. How do I do that? I'm going to, expand this, or it's going to be minus 2a1 minus 2a1 plus 2a2 equals 0. So maybe I'll bring my a1s on the other side. 2a2 equals 4a1. So therefore a1 is what? Yeah, 2. What's the next thing I need to do? Yeah, it's for person, same thing for person 2. Now I'm taking du2. du2. That's the derivative of this with respect to person. Derivative of this with respect to 2. What's the derivative of this? Yeah, minus 2 minus 2 minus 1. That's the same thing as this. What is true? Now I'm taking the derivative of this. What's that? Set this equal to 0. Did you take an econ class? This is the classic first examples of Cornell equilibrium or duopoly. Okay. All right. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to solve for a2, I guess. So this is minus 2a2 plus 2. 2 plus 2a1 plus 2. Is that right? Oh, not this. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, minus 2a2 plus 2, right? Minus 2a1. There's a plus. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
But also, you were almost, you could have almost written it that way.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. What do? Maybe put the 2 plus 2a1 equals 4a2. So that a2 is going to be, I guess, 2 plus 2a1 over 4. This is 1 plus 2a1 over 2. Okay. This is the best responses. Now what's my next step? Yeah, exactly. Now we're just totally in the math world. We have this must be true. In an equilibrium, person 1's best response must be best responding to person 2. And person 2 must be best responding to person 1. So we just simply solve these things at the same time. We can just plug, right? So we can just plug this in here maybe. I don't know. A1 equals A2 over 2. So that's the same thing as, which is like 1/2 times this thing, right? Okay. So now we just have one equation and one unknown. How do you want to solve it? So, I don't know, I guess I can just multiply by everything by 2. 2a1 equals 1.
A2 is 1 plus A1 over 2. Like,
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. You're right. That's a mistake. Thank you. So it's 1 half times 1 is 0. Okay. If I multiply everything by 2, this goes away, I have this. I'm going to multiply it by 2 again. 4a1 equals 1 plus a1. Look at what? 3a1 equals 1. a1 is going to be 1/3. What about person 2? Oh, if I just plug this in here, it's because what? 2/3. 1 plus 1/3 is 2. This is like 4/3 over 2. Okay, so the idea here is we choose between 0 and 1. I should do it here and here. Okay, and it sort of makes sense, right? Because I want to be close to 0, but I also want to be close to 2, right? Sort of, yeah, but you want to be close to 1, but you also want to be close to me. So you kind of, this makes it all work, right? So I'm kind of equally close to be where I want to be and where you are, right? And you're sort of equally close between me and your good friend.
Using this approach, do we still refer to it as a Nash equilibrium?
Yeah, that's absolutely a Nash equilibrium. So the way we use just Nash equilibrium would be simply just 1/3, 2/3. And it's just like in any other expression. Okay, all right, this is not a bad model. Let's think about, we can actually interpret this too. I think it's easy to interpret, where's the, here, this is the one best response, right? Or, I guess I'll write it this way. You'll write it as this. 1 plus a1 over 2. Okay, what does this mean, kind of? I think it actually has a meaning, which is, this kind of looks like an average. Okay, person 2 prefers to be a 1, but also wants to be an a1. And this is basically just splits the difference between those things. So person 2 kind of wants to be near the Ising span, or wants to have an opinion like, you know, their actual real opinion, but also wants to be kind of keep the peace with their spouse or something, so they kind of split the difference. Yeah. How about over here? You can think of this as an average between person 2 and their before 0. Okay? Similarly, so makes sense. Okay, so everyone's averaging, and the result equilibrium is that people kind of moderate their stances. Okay. Question about that?
I don't think I've seen this in an applied political science paper in the lab.
Oh, no.
Like, we were so obsessed with spatial model,
Oh, yeah.
And yet, like I don't think I've seen an explicit statement of a utility function that is dependent on the other party or the other member, the other members in the primary or anything. Yeah.
Right. The typical
Yeah.
spatial model cares about votes or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
could, this is meant to be just sort of a,
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like opinions or something. I mean,
Yeah.
but I'm interpreting it spatially, I guess.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty simple. It's just trying to build off of the really simple examples I used before too. Just anytime you have utility functions which are quadratic, that's good because you can take the derivative if you get something linear. So that's always. Okay, simple model. We've solved it. Yay, that's good. Okay, now let's try to elaborate this on a little bit. Okay, the next elaboration will be something like this. Okay, so here I'm basically kind of saying this is my utility from being my own kind of true to myself. This is my sort of conformity or something here. You say that I'm going to change this. So I'm now going to say, what if I become, I guess I'll pose it as a question. Say I become a lot more conformist or a lot less conformist. How would I change, how would I like this to be? To make them different? Or say that you're more, you care more about being with, having the same opinion as other people.
Yeah, by giving weights.
Yeah, right.
Would you add a1 and a2?
You could add, exactly, you could add more of these things, like just another one, which is kind of like changing the weight here.
Yeah.
So for example, if this is 3, it means like I would care a lot about your opinion. Okay? I care about your opinion 3 times as much as I care about kind of my own personal things. Okay? So I'm going to make that an actual variable, get R. Okay, where R is something you're supposed to kind of corresponds to how much you care about conformity in some sense. How will this change things? Well, you can do the whole thing again all over again, right? Just except with R instead of. Okay, so now what changes? There's an R here, right? When I take this derivative. Okay, then this becomes, this is what, minus 2a1, minus 2ra1, plus 2ra2, is 0. So now I'm going to bring my, say my a1 to this side. Well, maybe I'll divide everything by 2 first. It's easier. Minus a1 minus ra1 plus ra2, 0. I'll bring my a1 to this side and get ra2 equals a1 plus ra1. That's the same thing as what 1 plus r times a1, right? So therefore a1 is going to be what? I think ra2 over 1 plus r. Okay. You can think of this as an average as well. You can think of this as 0 plus ra2 over 1 plus r. R is kind of like the weight. It's not like a weighted average. R, the larger R is, the more weight you put in the other person's thing. Okay. Similarly, let's do it for the first one. Good. This is going to be an R here. Right? This becomes minus 2R plus 2R. Okay, then we have, let's see, I guess I'll just do it. Alright. What do I do now? Should I put all my, maybe I'll just divide by 2. Okay, then maybe I'll bring my a2s on one side. That's what I did before. 1 plus ra1 equals a2 plus ra2. This is something as 1 plus r plus a2. So then I think a2 equals 1 plus ra1. This is the test response. That's this test response. Okay, does that make sense? It's very symmetric, right? You can think of it again as like a weighted average, where r is the weight. When before r was 1, right? And so it's just this average. How do I find an actual equilibrium? Just solve these things, right? So we can do it the same way, but I think we'll just substitute. So a1 is going to be r over 1 plus r times a2, which is this thing. Okay, this is just, now we're in the math world. Maybe I'll multiply everything 1 plus times 1 with 1 plus r squared. Right? Okay. So I have 1 plus r squared. A1, I'm going to bring my a1 over this side. Minus r squared a1 equals r. Like this is an r squared a1. What is this? So I'll just expand this. It's going to be 1 plus 2r plus r squared a1 minus r squared a1. So these things cancel out. This cancels out, so we get 1 plus 2r a1, right? This term and this term, they go away. Equals r. Therefore, a1 is r over 1 plus 2. Oh no, did I make a mistake? I want it to be r over 1 plus r. No, you're right, 1 plus 2r, I'm sorry. Okay, a1 is r over 1 plus 2r. Yeah, it's right, okay. I think we're good. I don't know, for what reason, I'm thinking there should be 1 plus r, but it's 0. How about a2? What's a2? Okay, we're just doing math now. a2 is what? This thing. 1 over 1 plus r times 1 plus r a1. Okay, so this is 1 plus r times r1 plus 2r. I guess, hold on. 1 plus r squared over 1 plus 2r. Right? Okay. This is equal to 1 over 1 plus r. I'm going to bring this up in the numerator. This is 1 plus 2r plus r squared over 1 plus 2r. Can I simplify this a little bit? Yeah, I can factor this, yeah.
Plus r squared?
Yeah, exactly, right. So this is over 1 over 1 plus r. This is like 1 plus r squared, right? Over 1 plus 2r. And I can, therefore, this is simply 1 plus r. 1 plus 2r. Okay, I think that's right. Now, before, this number was like 1/3, 2/3. That's when r was 1. So does it work? Yeah, if I stick 1 in here, this is 1 over 3. This is 2 over 3, so we have confirmation. That's always good. So we start with a pretty simple example, but then we added this parameter of r. It checks out. So now, what's the Nash equilibrium? Okay, this is r over 1 plus 2r. 1 plus r. That's the Nash equilibrium. So I guess we're assuming that r is positive too. So we should see that. I used to be Facebook friends with Kenneth Arrow. Do you know who he is? He's a very famous economist. Probably one of the most foundational economists of the 20th century. So, like, I don't know how he checked Facebook, but I posted my story about my theory of television and he liked it. So that was really fucking that day.
Ken Arrows on Facebook?
He was.
Oh my
Passed
gosh.
away, but yeah.
That is,
It's kind of, yeah.
that's interesting.
It's funny, like, you know, so like there's some friends I know when I was an undergraduate who were my professors, and then like sometimes they'll like, I'll write something, they'll like it, and I go, oh, just feels odd. So, yeah, it was definitely a compliment to get that like. Okay, so what's going on here? We'll interpret it. So we interpreted the best response, right? These are like weighted averages. Solve for the Nash equilibrium. If r is 0, what are these numbers? This is 0, this is what? 1, right, exactly, right? So it means that if you don't care about social stuff, you just go to where you are, period. Okay? If r is 1, this becomes 1/3, 2/3, right? What happens if r increases away from 1, like 2, 3, 4, 5?
They become close.
Yeah, exactly right. If r is 100, this is like 100 over 201. They become very close to half. Because as you care more about the other person, you sort of move away from it, and so you kind of closer. So that's kind of cool. That's another nice little thing. Okay. Any questions about that? This is typical, like if I want to talk about how to make models, this is at least what I do is, I started with something which seems very, very simple, and I'm just throwing little things in there more and more. Okay, let's keep on doing that. So what if instead of 0 and 1, there's going to be a punchline, I promise. I'm going to say that instead of 0, you have this kind of, this. So C1 is like your, you know, what you prefer, is kind of your ideal point. And C2 is, so that's person 1's ideal point. C2 is person 2's ideal point. Okay? That's all I'm doing. Now I'm changing just the math a little bit. Just make it more complicated. Okay, let's keep on doing the same thing. How does this change? I think this becomes, okay, what? The derivative of this is going to be what?
Minus 2, A1 minus
Yeah, this is the same thing. Minus r times 2 r. Okay. All right, so I'm going to, we set this equal to 0. So therefore I get what? I'm gonna put, this is going to be 2C1. I'm going to put all the A1s on that side. Plus 2RE2. Oh, that's going to be 2A1 plus 2RE1. Right? I think it's the same as what we did before, except that I don't have this. Maybe divide it by 2. This is the same thing as just like 1 plus r times A1. So therefore I have what? A1 is going to be C plus RA2. This is C1 now. Does this make sense to you? Yeah, before it was a C1 was a 0, right? Again, it's just like a weighted average. I care about what I'm doing and what you're doing, sort of my own sort of ideal point and what you're doing, and the weight on what you're doing is R. Okay. You want to do the same thing for person 2? Or do you just want to realize it sort of? You can just cut to the chase, right? We could,
Yeah.
A2 would be what? Okay, A2 I think would be, yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, so now, let's find an equilibrium. Okay. We just have to solve these things. We could use a computer, but maybe we'll just use the board, I don't know.
And with the computer, so this is a spatial model, right?
Well, yeah, you can think of it that way, yeah.
And could this all be mapped out on the graph, just to
Oh.
find the Nash equilibrium?
Yes,
Just
you can.
visually. find it?
Absolutely. Well, let's do the very first one. Let's just do that. Okay. Okay, so remember the very first thing we did was what was it? I think it was A1 was, the very first thing was this A2 over 2, right? That's what the first one was, right? With no R's or anything, right? And I think A2 was 1 plus A1 over 2, right? So like, yeah, my thing was the average between 0 and A2, yours is the average between 1 and 2. Okay, so how does that look like on the graph? I think it's this way, 1 and 2. Okay. So, given what your choice is, I guess that's just, given what your choice is, this is my best response. So, say A2 is 1, my best response is going to be 1/2, right? So that's going to put a little point there. If your A2 is 0, mine is like this. If your A2 is 2, mine is 1. So I think we got this line here. This is person 1's best response given what 2 is doing. Okay, so yeah. If we did a matrix, it would be like those little underlines. That's exactly what it would be. How about person 2's best response? If A1 is 0, what's 2's best response? A half, right? So that's, if A2 is 0, then person 1's best response is a half. Corresponds to this. If A2 is, sorry, A1 is 1.
A1 is 0.
Huh? What, does that make sense? Make a mistake?
A1, if A1 is 1.
Oh, right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If A1 is 0, then A2 is a half. That's this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Because we're going from A. If A1 is 0, A2 should be half. If A1 is 1, A2 is what?
1.
1. Okay, what if A1 is negative 1? 0, right? So it looks kind of like this. Okay, I think that's right.
Oh,
Can you write that?
and would that intersection be the equilibrium?
That is, yeah, exactly. So I think, does it look all right? It should, hope it should be 1/3, 2/3.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
Now
It should-
it's like,
yeah, do a little better. So here's a half, right? So it should be above that, right? Yeah, it looks like that. This is an actually. Okay. Well, this is a fun question. Well, let's just do it here. We have, well, not the C1, C2, but we have the R's. When we did the R's, it was what? This was RA2 over 1 plus R, right? And this one was 1 plus RA1 over 1 plus R. Okay, so this is just fun now. If R increases, how does these things change? These graphs, these lines change.
R increases, they should, approximate each other, so they're,
Oh yeah, maybe they're kind of becoming more like this. Let's think about it. Let's think of it. I mean, what is R is 0? When R is 0, what does the picture look like? This means you don't care about the other person at all. If R is 0, it means that no matter what you do, A2 is my optimal thing is 0. Right? This is my best response to like that. If R is 0, that means that no matter what I do, your best response is, I think 1, right? So that's what it looks like. Yeah. Okay. I think as the R increases, my best response, that's what you're saying, right? Goes more and more like this, right? So think of it like, yeah, exactly. If R is 100, then A1 is actually very close to A2, right? Yeah, exactly. Is that kind of going like that? Right. So as that happens, so, okay, so let's see. We started out like kind of like this, then kind of go like this. Yeah, I guess like that, right? I think that's right. So as they kind of get it more and more like this, what happens to the equilibrium? I think the idea is that if it gets closer and closer, you kind of have more this situation, kind of like they're really close to the half time. So that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's what you're going to have basically two lines that are very, very similar to each other, and then they'll intersect that. Okay. Okay. All right. So this is what we go back. This is we're allowing people's. It's not just 0 and 1. It's we're just making this a variable. Now we have 3 variables: there's C1, C2, and R, and we're looking at how the natural group changes these things. Should I solve it? Do you want to do the math, or do you want to see what's in my notes? You can see something there. You can use mathematics to solve it. Do you want me to do that? I'm happy to.
Like an online graph.
Well, I can just stick this into the computer and it just solves it. Want to do that?
yeah.
We're lazy. We're millennials.
That's how everyone's doing.
What?
That's how everyone does it.
No, I mean, when I was studying this stuff, this all was all very new. Like, you had, there was no computer-assisted math stuff. Like, what is this? Okay, so let's see. Solve. What is it? A1 equals. Is it C1 plus RA2?
C1 plus RA2
Uh-huh.
over 1 plus.
I did it by hand this morning, so. What's going on here? What's it doing? Okay. That's the right thing, right? Yeah. Okay. In fact, when I think about it, almost everything I did when I was in graduate school, I used the computer first. I almost never used the math. Because you just quickly do an example, and if you see that works, then you're all set. So I feel like I was cutting edge at the time when I was in graduate school. Like, I used not just, those little Macs, which, that you don't talk about, they look like little this. I used those things. I actually used them for right. It wasn't just a joke. It was like that.
Now all of it is just very accessible.
Exactly. Okay, so now we're doing this A2. Oh, this is A1. I don't know what's, yeah, this should be my A1. Okay. Now I'm doing A2 is going to be what?
A2 is C2 plus RA1.
C2 plus RA1. 1 plus R. Okay. How this works. What is this solve? Did I make, there's some sort of weird thing I'm going. Did I not write it right? Oh, I see. It's okay. hold on. I'm gonna write it all over again. A1 equals C1 plus R. A2 equals C2 plus R A1. Plus R. Okay, boom. That's, oh. Is that right?
Yeah.
That doesn't look right. Oh, I've got to, I've got to put the I've got to put what I'm solving for, sorry. A1 and A2. There you go. Okay, that's correct. No, there's a lot of minuses. Maybe I'll just do simplify. Okay, that's better. What's going on here? So, this is what,
C1 plus RC1, right?
yeah, C1 plus RC1, exactly. So this is again like an average, right? What was our, yeah, look, see, the 1 plus 2R is in the bottom, yeah? Before C1 was 1, sorry, C1 was 0, right? So this is,
Yeah.
so this is gonna be, and C2 is 1, right? So this is gonna be 0, so yeah, this is so R over 1 plus 2R, right? So C1, remember C1 is 0, C2 is 1. This is 1 plus 1R, yeah, 1 plus R over 1 plus 2R. So yeah, it works, it checks out. Okay, so what's, is there an interpretation? Again, you can think of this as like, you know, an average, right? Something like, this is what, oh no, I guess, yeah, the interpretation is, this is the interpretation of the average, this is the best response, this is the, so I think this is good. Let's think about it. So before, when C1 was 0 and C2 was 1, we didn't ask what happened as C1 and C2 changed. Okay, if C1 changes, okay, how does A1 change? So maybe I'll write it more simply. Okay, so we have A1 equals C1 times 1. Okay. 1 plus R times C1 plus RC2 over 1 plus 2R. A2 is going to be 1 plus R C2 plus RC1 or plus 2. Okay, as C1 changes, what happens with this? If it increases? Huh? Yeah, increases, right? Assuming R is positive. So C1 increases, that makes sense, right? If person one's opinion kind of moves rightward or whatever, they, you know, their thing will, if their sort of ideal point moves rightward, they'll move rightward. Okay? They'll move, if the ideal point moves leftward, they'll move leftward. How about this? What if so on person one, what if your ideal point changes? You move, I'm still reading, you know, I'm watching MSNBC or something, but you move from Fox News to OANN, whatever. Okay? Yeah, so yeah, exactly right. So it moves up by this too. So I'm affected by what you read as well. Okay, so if you become, you know, your core beliefs change, I will change also. Which changes me more? Do I change more if my core beliefs change, or if your core beliefs change? Yours? Yeah, my own, right? So 1 plus R is bigger than R. Does that make sense? So that, all that is reasonable. Yeah? Okay. Does that make sense? Okay, so I think this is good. All right. Fun things you can do, right? What about, has R, I guess you did this already, but as R increases, what happens to this? Say R becomes like 1,000,000.
Approaches 1 half.
I think it approaches, let's see. Let's look at, we got 100. It's like 101 C1 plus 100 C2 over 201, right?
So the approach is like the average.
Yeah, exactly the average, exactly right. So this is kind of close to C1 plus C2 over 2, simply, right? Yeah, which is kind of like, before it was a half, 1 0. Yeah, exactly. That makes sense too. Okay, cool. So we're just adding little features. Okay. Now this is the fun thing, which is fun. Okay, and this is what I claim this to be. Interesting. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to add another little feature. You see now, now this means I care about my own belief, but also care about conformity. You care about your own belief, you also care about conformity. Okay, now then, I'm going to this other little feature, which is that we're going to have now another thing, which is, what is this? We both have like a third friend or whatever, but we care about them too. Okay, or maybe we're both like, we start both watching the same TV show. Okay, something like that. Okay, this makes sense? Okay, so I still have a conformity, and this is not a conforming thing. This simply means, I care about, what I C1, but I also care about D. You care about C2, and you also care about D. You can think of like, so now my core belief is I want to be close to C1 and D. With conformity, I also want to be close to D. Okay, how is this going to change things? Well, it's same thing. I'll show you kind of why I'm doing this. How does this change? This is the derivative here, this derivative here, and I just throw in another one, minus 2 A1 minus D. Okay. Now what does this become? I'm going to put all the A1s on the sides. It's going to be 2C1 plus 2RA2 plus 2D equals 2A1, 2RA1 plus 2A1. Divide everything by 2 to get C1 plus RA2 equals A1 plus RA1 plus. So therefore, this is the same thing as with R plus 2 times A1. So therefore, A1 is equal to C plus D, or C1, sorry. C1 plus D plus RA2 over 1 R plus 2. Okay. It's okay, I didn't really change much. By adding the D, it actually doesn't, it's basically the same thing as a C1, really. Yeah? It's just like adding another element to the C1. It's still an average, whereas this is like weight 1, weight 1, weight R, so this weights add up to R plus 2. Make sense? Okay, so this is the best response here. If we did the best response simply from A2 would be equal to, I'll just switch things around, it's C2 plus D plus RA1 over R plus 2. So again, what's happening here? We each have an ideal point, we have conformity, but there's an element of our ideal point which is constant, which is shared among us. You can think of it as a third friend. Okay, so let's solve this now. So what was it? A1 is C1 plus D plus RA2 over 2, was it 2 plus R?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then this was, now I realize what I messed up here. Okay, and then A2 equals C1. Oh, I guess I'm just throwing the D in there. That's all I'm doing. Right? It's too bizarre. Okay. All right. Oops. Forgot to get the same mistake. That doesn't seem right. Where's the R's? Did I make a mistake? Oh, I'm sorry. this right?
Oh, the second one must be C2 plus D.
Oh, C2, oh yes, exactly. Yeah, it's not C1, C2, thank you. Oh, let's think about it. Let's just, before we go on, what does this mean? It means that kind of my ideal point is C1 plus D, yours is C1 plus D. We have the same ideal point.
Yeah.
If that's the case, we'll just choose the same thing, right? Then we fully conform, right? So that sort of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go, okay. Simplify that. Okay, what's going on here? Okay. Now I think this is interesting to me. Okay, so it's a little, what do we change? We added the D, right? That's what we did, right? So before, like when D was 0, I don't know if D was 0, I don't know. So what did we have before? Oh, I guess it's up here, right? This is what we had before. So what's happening? The C2R is the same. Well, this changed a little bit. We changed the weights a little bit, yeah? Maybe it's not interpretable? I think it's, basically D is kind of like a C, C1 in some sense. Well, actually, maybe it's not. It's, okay, the D and the C2 and the D and the C1 are sort of the same in best responses. But maybe they're different in the equilibrium. Let's think of it this way. Okay. As C1 increases, okay, we like to have it over, that's our order over there, right? A1 increases, right? All right. As C1 increases, does A1 increase? Yes. As C2 increases, does A1 increase? That's a second order effect I'm talking about. If your friend becomes more right-wing, you're going to be right-wing just because you want to be close. Okay, what about D? Okay. As D increases, that means you kind of have a third friend or some third kind of publication you're watching. As D increases, does A1 increase? Yes. Right? Okay, now let's think of this. If C1 increases and D, if C1 increases, at what rate does that happen? 2 plus R. Let's think about what that means. If that R is 0, that means it's 2, rate 2, right? If R is 0, as D increases, it's also at rate 2, right? So if R is 0, there's no conformity. C1 and D change, they affect you equally, which makes sense, right? Okay, how say that R is 1? What's the weight on C1? 3, whereas the rate of D is what? 4. Okay, what's going on there? That means if you have conformity, it means that a shared kind of signal influences you more than your own. Let's say R is like, I don't know, 5 or something like that. This is 7. This is going to be what, like 12 or something. You see what I'm saying? As R increases, the potency of that shared kind of goal is larger. You see what I'm saying?
So like it grows at a double rate, I guess?
Yeah. So if R is 0, they grow at the same rate. If R is 1, it's because it's like, I don't know, 4 versus 3. If R is 10, it's like 20 versus 12 or something like that. Right? It's a much larger. Okay, what's the idea here? Why is D different from C1? In the best responses, it's the same. The weights are the same in D C1. D C2, the weights are the same. However, it affects the equilibrium differently. Why is that?
Because both players care about
Yeah, exactly right. Because both players care about it. If it was a D1 and D2, it would be exactly the same as before. However, it's something which is shared. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. So the idea is that the shared influence on your beliefs, you think it's really about yourself, and it is in fact really only about yourself. However, if you think another person has that too, moving in that thing will affect your opinion more. Does that make sense? It affects that opinion more if the greater the amount of conformity. If there's no conformity, there's no reason it affects you more. D and C1 are the same. If R is higher, then D has more of a kick than C1. Okay? So I think this is not a deep, really thing. We could throw this together and model like an hour or something like that. Just put together just calculus or whatever. Okay, but I think I'm going to interpret this in a strong way. Okay, so I'm actually going to, let's see. Okay. So I have this paper. Let me see where I can find it. Is it this? No, it's going to be. It's sad. It's like it's easier to Google than to just find it on your local computer. Where is this thing? Okay, here. I'll just download it. So, okay, so this is a paper I'm trying to get through, trying to get published. Haven't worked on it in a while, but sometimes you update the, that's, I wrote in 2016, which now seems like a long time ago, pre-pandemic. Anyway, so what's going on in this paper? So I'm basically looking at kind of at what is a stereotype? How does a stereotype affect your thinking? And the idea is that, say somebody comes in for a job talk or something. Okay, they have one of the aspects of we all want to judge their quality, right? What signals their quality? Well, it could be just whether they have a good job talk or not, but it's also things like where they went to grad school or, whether they look intelligent or something like that, or other things just like gender stereotypes. Like you think, oh, maybe that person's male, so maybe they're a little more competent or whatever. Huh? Yeah, exactly. So the argument is that stereotypes so the standard argument is that, if stereotype is maybe a very weak signal, not very meaningful at all. But the thing about stereotypes which makes them stronger than just like information is that they're widely shared. That is, if I see like someone who's like, I don't know, has an accent or something, oh, that person's not as good, but I think that other people also share that stereotype too. Okay? The argument is that it's kind of like the D thing. Okay? In the presence of conformity, the stereotype has more power because it's widely shared. Oh, interesting. Oh yeah, exactly, right. So yeah, exactly. So gender things, ethnic things, anything which is visible, kind of has more public, is more like a D and less like a C1. Does that make sense, kind of? So that's my argument.
Sometimes it's visible to
Right, exactly. And maybe like where you got your PhD is also similar, like kind of like brand name or something like that. Yeah. Okay, so this kind of does the same thing, but now this is my model, but it's a kind of in a Bayesian context where you're trying to choose, you want to choose the quality. So something, job candidate comes, they could be high quality or low quality. Let's say it's probably pi 1 if they were high quality, etc. And this is the same thing as I had before. This is like, I want to choose an A1, which is close to my own kind of opinion, but I have this conformity thing too. Okay. So this model is not quite the same, but it's very similar to what we just did. The spirit is exactly the same. And so turns out that, so this is what you get. So the argument here is that it's couched in terms of signals. There's a private signal and public signal. Public signal is something which everyone sees, or a private signal is something you only see. So the private signal is something like the C1, the public signal is like the D. Okay, so this is like, this is the private signal, this is like a higher low quality signal. This capital H means you get a high quality public signal. Okay, so et cetera.
So R captures the sort of influence of conformity on that D, but how do you capture the fact that not everybody shares the same perception of that potential signal?
Yes.
The signal means different things to different.
Yes. So that would be another thing. Like,
sure.
In this model, yeah, a signal is like, if it's high quality, everyone understands what that means. But you're right, that would be another more elaborate way. Another way to think about it is like, say like, I don't know, I use a certain technique in my job market. So for some people that they would signal high quality, some people might signal low quality, and we might not know whether we agree. That would be complicated, right? But you could model that too. I mean, that's something that's interesting in a way. Another way to think about it is a stereotype has power not because I believe in it, but because I think that other people believe in it, and I think they widely know all that. Yeah. Okay, all right. So what's the point? I guess then anyway, this is just basically almost the same model we just did. Okay. This is kind of like, if R is 0, so this is the probability the private signal is correct, probability the public signal is correct. This is the, P is the quality of the private signal, Q is the probability of the public signal. Quality, so this is kind of how likely the signal is correct. So this is saying that if there's no conformity, then say a high quality private signal and low quality public signal is the same thing as low quality private and high quality public. There's no difference between the two, public and private. However, if R is 2, R is 10 is greater conformity, then it takes a higher quality private signal to balance out the public signal, because the public signal has that kind of oomph to it. All right, so let's see. This is like, okay, foray into data. So what I'm looking at is, I look at all academic fields. This is basically all the fields with which are awarded doctorates, and I can't look at some of the humanities because I'm trying to match this up with citation practices in that field. Okay, so like this life sciences. So basically, a very, very large set of subfields. Okay, so what's this? This is, I think, super fun. Okay, what's this? Okay, this is, I'm looking at the percentage of women in the field. On the x-axis, that's these numbers here. The x-axis is the average GRE, math GRE for people who apply to PhDs in this field. And this is the skewness of citation distribution in the field. This is defined as the percentage of papers published in that field which have fewer citations than the average. So what does that mean? If there are fewer citations than the median, that number would be 50 by definition. If the average is much higher than the median, that means that the distribution is kind of like this. Okay? It means that it's kind of like you either win it big or not at all. So you think of it like, say there's one paper which gets every single citation. Right? That means that almost all the papers are lower than the average number of citations. That's a super skewed distribution. That means like this. So basically, the higher the skewness, I'm interpreting that as the more likelihood that a paper will either get all the citations or not, which I'm interpreting as R, basically. The greater the skewness, it means that people are actually citing only the star papers most. Okay, because they're doing so because they want to. Okay, so the argument is this. The percentage of women in a field, this is well known, becomes lower as it becomes more quantitative. Okay? But I'm also arguing that it goes lower as the skewness gets worse. This corresponds to, as R goes up, that means that the stereotype has more power. Okay? The effect of the D is larger. Okay? And I think, just by eyeballing, that's sort of true. So, yeah, so as you get this way, you get more mathematical, so mathematics, atomic physics. These numbers have fewer women. Okay, so clearly the numbers get higher here, but they also, I think, decrease in this direction. Okay, so if I just, one way to make it a little clearer is by just looking at the these things alone. This is in engineering. So even though among all the engineering fields you're very quantitative, these numbers decrease in this direction. Okay, that is, the engineering fields, which are all kind of more clubby in the sense that people want to cite the things everyone else does, has a high R. Okay, stereotypes matter more, sexist stereotypes have more power, there are fewer women in those fields. That's my claim. And you kind of see it, these numbers decrease. Okay, so this is physical sciences, this large now variation in mathematics, but they do, roughly speaking, go down. This is this is an outlier, there's a lot of people other than statistics.
Could go the other way though, right? Women are better about not being clubby about.
Oh yeah, it's also, yeah, it's true. Okay, that's another thing. It could be that the more women in the field, they're less clubby about citation practices. That's true. Okay. Anyway, so anyways, this is biological sciences. I think it also goes down, roughly speaking. You know, it's not perfect. It's not fantastic, but I think that the fact that there's an effect at all, I think, is something. Anyway, so this is if you do the regression. So like the percent of women in the field, regressive skewness alone is, it's not too bad. I think it's 95%. There's like an N of 178, there's like a lot of fields. If you put the math GRE in there, it goes away. But if you could correct for all these different things as you correct for the field, then it's so on. Yeah. So what about effect sizes? This is kind of like from minimum to maximum. So yeah, so if you go from minimum skewness to maximum skewness, that takes the percentage of women in that field down by 17%. So I think it's not trivial. It's a large thing. It's not as much as the 28 GRE, but it is fairly large. Okay. Right, it's, for example, this is equal to as large as, say, going from non-intervening field to an intervening field. Okay. This is interesting too. So I do the same thing also with like ethnicity. So this is just letting you know the distribution of, these are among all the fields, percentage of like women, of temporary means basically for temporary visa holders. So this means this is the percentage of people who are coming from outside the US.
Wow, there's a lot of variation in that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that too, exactly.
Wow.
So there's large variation in this, very large variation in, there's some fields which are almost 90% women, some which are almost 10%. Yeah, there's fair amount here, but there's not as much. Yeah, but I'm surprised by this, actually. Okay, so, this is interesting. Okay, so these are the effect sizes if I do the same thing. Okay, so it turns out, all right, so this is what I showed you before, the skewness of the women. So, what is going on here? So, there's much less variation of Black and Hispanic and Asian. So, it's understandable why the specs might be smaller, but this is consistent with a stereotype, the negative stereotypes for Black and Hispanics and the positive ones for Asians.
These are just plotting coefficients from the regression that has all these variables.
No, so, sorry, each one is a different regression.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
this is simply regressing Black on those
Okay.
things, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I should make it clear. Yeah, so this means that maybe there's a positive stereotype for Asians. This is interesting. This is all kind of, so if you do regress on the number percentage of temporary, this is for students essentially, that makes sense that there are fewer, non-US students in fields where there's lower verbal GRE.
But they do very well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's not fantastic either. Okay. So anyway, to me, this graph shows that the effect on women and maybe people of color of the stereotype thing is not just about quantitative GRE, because quantitative GRE does pick up the non-US students, but it does not pick up their. So I think it is a little different thing. So. Yeah. The more women psychology. So anyway, so that's the thing. So I kind of believe in this model, to be honest. I really do. I think that, so there's a weakness here in the data, like, does the skewness of the citations really getting at that R? Does it really, maybe there are other reasons why you have skewed citations as opposed to just pure conformity, but that's kind of what I did. So yeah, that's it. So So I guess we're going way longer than.
Sure.
Anyway, does that make sense? Start simple. We just started with that 0, 1/3, 2/3 thing, and then just kind of throw in things and kind of, as you throw in things, you can kind of see them where, how it makes sense, and you also have the previous thing to kind of as a stepping stone to get to the next thing. So you almost never do you just throw out the whole, full-blown thing out there, right? You just sort of start simple to sort of understand, and then just put in things and see, hey, maybe I can get an interesting effect by putting these things in different places. So, anyway. Okay. Do we have 2 more weeks or 1 more week left? 2 more weeks, okay. So let me know, huh? Oh, there's finals, yeah. And then let me know if there's any things you want to do, too. I could just come up with stuff, too, but let me know if there's any particular topic you want to talk about or something. Yeah. Okay.